Please be seated.
Good afternoon, one and all. Please be seated. Welcome, one and all. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. I see many, many distinguished visitors, the Secretary of the Army, the Undersecretary of Defense, and many others. Distinguished National Guardsmen and Reservists, thank you very much for spending some time with us this afternoon. I am Deborah Lee, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs, and I have the great honor of welcoming all of you this afternoon as we celebrate a terrific news story for our total force and also honor some very, very important members of our National Guard and Reserve. Of course, as you know, we're gathered here for the first pinnings of what we call the new M device, which is the mobilization device. On August 6, 1996, President Clinton signed the executive order that authorized this M device to be worn on the Armed Forces Reserve Medal. The executive order also established August 1st, 1990 as the effective date for this award. And so what we are doing today is honoring 14 individuals who qualify for this award, but I have to tell you, they have many, many colleagues with them. We estimate that some 220,000 members of the National Guard and Reserve will be authorized to wear this M device, and it will be for all of those who have served in contingencies that our country has participated in from Desert Storm on forward. As many of you know, this administration, the President, and particularly Dr. Perry, has made increased reliance on our National Guard and Reserve forces a real cornerstone of our strategy as we enter into and continue through this very challenging post-Cold War world. And so the 228,000 individuals, again, the 14 of whom we are beginning the pinnings with today, are really front and center as part of that strategy and indicative of the fact that we are relying more and more on our Guard and Reserve. Thank goodness, since Desert Storm, our country has not been at war, but as you all know, it has been a very complicated period, a period of very high op tempo for our forces. And so this strategy, which we call increased reliance and compensating leverage, we think makes very, very good sense because it leverages an asset that we have, and it also helps to reduce the PERS tempo on our active duty forces. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce a man who I have had the honor of working with for a full 4 years now. He has been a wonderful Secretary of Defense, extremely supportive of the Guard and Reserve. He has placed the Guard and Reserve and leveraging the Guard and Reserve and the quality of life of the Guard and Reserve very much at the top of our collective agenda. The Honorable William J. Perry, our Secretary of Defense.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I wonder how many of the American public knows that 220,000 Guard and Reserves have served in contingency operations the last 6 years. Well, one of the things this M award does will be not only to thank and recognize the individuals, but also to let the public know what their Guard and Reserve forces are doing for them. Our military forces are a team that's in a game to win. And each player on that team must be an all-American. These words of General Omar Bradley have never been more true than today. Because today, every member of our total force, the active forces, the reserves, the National Guard, must truly be part of one team, and that team must be an all-American team. Today, we count on the Guard and the Reserves not only to be on the team, but to be on the first string. Whenever and wherever America's military is needed. We cannot conduct today any significant contingency operation without calling on the Guards and without calling on the Reserves. We don't even think about conducting an operation without them. In 90 and 91, you helped storm the desert, stop a tyrant in the Persian Gulf. In 92 and in 93, you helped restore hope to starving thousands in Somalia. In 94 and 95, you helped uphold democracy in Haiti. And in 95 and 96, you have been part of a great joint endeavor to bring peace to the heart of Europe, serving on the flight lines of Aviano, on the supply lines in Germany and Hungary, and on the front lines in Bosnia. We rely on the reserve component because in this era, we need to get the full use of every man and every woman in uniform, whether they are full-time or whether they are part-time. We also need the unique perspective that a reservist or a guard brings to the job. The professional skills that you apply in your civilian jobs are increasingly important to many of the unique military missions we perform today. And finally, making more use of your talents help us bridge the gap between the military and civilian communities in this era of an all-volunteer force. The M that you will now wear on your chest stands not only for your service, but also for the unique sacrifices that mobilization means for guards and reserves. For you, mobilization means uprooting your lives, leaving not only your families, but also your jobs and your everyday communities. For all of your service and your sacrifice, Winston Churchill perhaps expressed it best when he said, "The reservist is twice the citizen." And he was right. And so therefore it is my honor and my pleasure to offer you today the gratitude of myself, of the Department of Defense, and indeed of our entire nation.
The Secretary of Defense takes pleasure in presenting the Armed Forces Reserve Medal with Mobilization Device to members of the reserve components of the United States Armed Forces for service rendered in the nation's defense during military contingency operations. The nation is grateful to these National Guard and Reserve members for their spirit of patriotism and professionalism at great personal risk during periods of heightened global tensions and national need. The dedicated and willing service of our Guardsmen and Reservists is essential to the nation's military readiness, the capability to deter aggression, and the flexibility to respond effectively to crises worldwide. The Department of Defense is proud to have such citizen soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who are faithfully committed to service in the defense of their country. Army National Guard, Captain Drew Sullins. Captain Sullins is a member of the 29th Mobile Public Affairs Detachment of the Maryland Army National Guard. Captain Sullins was called up as a public affairs officer for Task Force Eagle in Tuzla, Bosnia-Herzegovina during Operation Joint Endeavor from January to July 1996. Sergeant First Class Susan E. Hurley. Sergeant Hurley is a member of the Arkansas Army National Guard now assigned to the Personal Directorate at the National Guard Readiness Center. She served as a Personal Action Team member in Saudi Arabia during Operation Desert Storm. From the United States Army Reserve, Lieutenant Colonel Harry Dobson. Lieutenant Colonel Dobson is a member of the United States Army Reserve's 352nd Civil Affairs Command in Riverdale, Maryland. Lieutenant Colonel Dobson served as a public safety officer in Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti. Staff Sergeant Gary May. Sergeant May is a member of the Army Reserve's 450th Civil Affairs Battalion in Riverdale, Maryland. Sergeant May served as a member of the public safety team in Haiti during Operation Uphold Democracy. From the United States Naval Reserve, Lieutenant Commander Ashley P. Lang. Lieutenant Commander Lang is a Crisis Action Center Watch Officer and Contingency Planner with the Naval Facilities Augmentation Group, Anacostia. She is still on active duty for Operation Joint Endeavor. Construction Mechanic 3rd Class Edward Brackney. Petty Officer Brackney, a member of the Naval Marine Construction Battalion 21 in Lakehurst, New Jersey, was called to duty in support of Operation Joint Endeavor. From the United States Marine Corps Reserve, First Lieutenant David Sandvold. First Lieutenant Sandvold is presently assigned to Headquarters Marine Corps as a Reserve Affairs Accessions Plans Officer. He earned the award while a sergeant with the 2nd Marine Division during the Persian Gulf War. Corporal Jonathan F. Gonzalez. Corporal Gonzalez, who was mobilized for Operation Desert Storm, is assigned to the Rations Company, 4th Supply Battalion, 4th Reserve Support Group at Anacostia Naval Station, Washington, D.C. From the Air National Guard, Staff Sergeant Christine M. Lang. Sergeant Lang is a flight engineer in the Maryland Air National Guard's 135th Airlift Squadron at Martin State Airport. She served as a loadmaster in Operation Desert Storm. Senior Airman Siku Richardson. Senior Airman Richardson was mobilized for Operation Desert Storm while a private first class in the District of Columbia Army National Guard. Senior Airman Richardson is currently serving with the 113th Fighter Wing, District of Columbia Air National Guard. From the Air Force Reserve, First Lieutenant Roger Bott. Lieutenant Bott, a pilot in the Air Force Reserve's 459th Airlift Wing at Andrews Air Force Base, flew aeromedical evacuations, aerial refueling, and classified missions in support of Operation Restore Hope in Somalia. Staff Sergeant Jasper Barrett. Sergeant Barrett, a cargo processor with the Air Force Reserve's 459th Airlift Wing at Andrews Air Force Base, served as a Ramp Services Assistant Supervisor for Operation Desert Storm and volunteered to serve as a handler of hazardous materials in support of Operation Restore Hope in Somalia. Representing the Coast Guard Reserve, Chief Warrant Officer 2, John J. Brown. Chief Brown, assigned to the Coast Guard's Maritime Security Office, Hampton Roads, served during Operation Desert Storm as a Hazardous Materials Safety Supervisor at the Wilmington, Delaware, and Charleston, South Carolina Maritime Security Offices. Port Securityman First Class Eugene W. Beach. Petty Officer Beach, assigned to the U.S. Coast Guard Station St. Inigos, Maryland, was mobilized for Operation Desert Storm, where he supervised port security and the loading of hazardous materials onto ships bound for the Persian Gulf from Wilmington, Delaware, and Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Perry, for honoring us with your presence today. Congratulations, one and all, to our honorees for your service. We thank you very much. I also want to just take a moment and thank family members who are with us today, and I know we also have some civilian employers who are with us today. You are part of the team as well, integral part of the team. Stick with us. We need you more than ever. And by the way, we have a reception immediately following this ceremony. And please do stick with us. I'm going to be front and center congratulating each and every one of these fine soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen, and I would invite you to do the same. And then we also have some refreshments. If there are any questions about the M device or any of the matters that we discuss here today, again, we'll be here and happy to do our best to answer them. Thank you very much for being with us, and please stick with us. Thanks.